I read over 100 books a year, and I'm going to tell you how I do that so that you can do the same. Hi, I'm Beth. Welcome back to Beth's Books. I read a lot, and then I talk a lot about reading. Last year, I read about 112 books. I think the highest per year I've ever read is 184. I've never hit the 200 mark. Do I think you should read 100 books a year? No. Unless you want to. Reading over 100 books a year has kind of been set by YouTube or Book Talk as the standard of reading. And listen, I work a full-time job and I do this, but I would say this is very much a full-time hobby. I don't have kids. I don't have other family members to take care of. My husband helps me with a lot of my day-to-day life, but this is something that I put a lot of time and effort into and have kind of refined over the years. So I'll tell you what works for me and maybe you can choose some bits and pieces. So that being said, is 100 books necessary to call yourself a really good reader, a voracious reader, to hold yourself above other people that are reading? No. In fact, I think it's kind of an arbitrary number because you can read 100 dusters. And wow, you read 100 books this year, that's so great. If you told me you read 10 books that were absolute bangers, thought provokers, that you retained, that you learned from, I'm way more impressed by that. So it's important that you start by setting a realistic goal. My goal is always 100 because that sort of evens out to 2 books a week of the year. Obviously that would be 104. But typically that is 1 audio or ebook and 1 physically read book. One way you are not going to achieve your goal is if you set one that is too high, you're too behind by the middle of the year and you think, why even bother? I'll never achieve it, and you feel like a failure. I don't know what it says about me, but sometimes I'll set a goal that's too low so that I can break it and set a new goal. It's like writing things on your checklist just to scratch them off. But honestly, that can be the motivation that you need to keep going and to feel good and kind of get that reward feedback. So basically, feel encouraged that you are reading at all and make sure you set yourself an attainable goal. If you set 200 books a year, A, I want to know what your life looks like, and B, do you think that that's adding value to how you're consuming literature, or do you think it's maybe taking away from it? This next point is going to sound very self-explanatory, but make time for reading. This is something that when I talk to a lot of people, they're like, I don't have time in the day. I can't do it in mornings because I don't want to get up earlier. I can't do it in the evenings because I have to vacuum the floor and stuff. And that's okay, but you're not going to get that reading done until you set time apart just for reading. Let your mind rest and not think about all the daily tasks. So find a space where you are intentionally setting apart time that you can go read. Personally, my screen time report came back last week. I probably could be finishing 1 extra book a week if I didn't have TikTok. And I think that's a pretty common theme, is that a lot of us do have more time in our lives. It just feels like we don't. And it's like, oh, I'm not getting good sleep in. And it's like, girl, you're on your phone for 2 hours before bed every night. That's bad. Some people are like 10-minute a day people. You'd think a short attention span would stack this against me, but I actually have so short an attention span that if I only read for 10 minutes, I actually don't enjoy reading. Whereas if I can get past that 10-minute hump, I will read for 2 hours. So for me, I get 3 days off of work at a time, and I can't really read during the work week. So on those 3 days off, I'm reading 2 hours a morning. That is before everything about my day kicks into gear, before I have to run out and do errands. I get up early and just read with my coffee because now it's become a habit, a routine, even though it's not a habit I can do every day of the week. But if you're a 10-minute girly, go for it. Read before bed, whatever. I'm still working on putting my phone away before bed, obviously. And that will help you stack towards your goals. But for me, I'm someone who actually has to rip it out in big chunks so that I'm focused and I read faster and more efficiently because I'm in the flow state. Whereas if I read for only 10 minutes, I might get through like 2 pages. But if I read for an hour, I'll get through 60, which is more pages, right? Yeah. Clearly I'm not reading math books. Okay, the next thing that you need to do to read 100 books in a year is find mixed mediums. So, physical book, audiobook, ebook. Physical books are great. They can be expensive if you're reading 100 books a year. If you have that disposable income, go for it. Get them from your library. Libby or library apps, incredible tools. You can get so many free books that you can read on a device or audiobooks, because I'll be honest, not everybody has that Audible money, you know what I mean? Maybe invest in a Kindle. You can take that with you wherever, but if you already have a tablet or even a phone, you can get the Kindle app, or again, like I said, Libby, things that you can download on your phone. Take that when you're on the train, when you're in the back of an Uber, when you're sitting at the bus station waiting for the bus. You're in the doctor's office, or the possibilities are endless. And often books are cheaper on those platforms. Now, before I hear any audiobook slander, I've thought about this a lot recently because someone said to me the other day, they were like, oh, so you haven't read 100 books in a year. And I was like, interesting, expand on that. If you are reading with your eyes, they're like, that counts. I would argue, little ableist, you know what I mean? What if someone's reading with their hands? Braille. I actually just thought of that. That just popped into my head. But think about how the first books, oral history and stories, were passed down through generations. This is like one of the most fundamental aspects of the human existence is oral history and sharing stories. We talk about, oh, Western culture is all built off of Greeks and the classics. And so what do we think of Homer's Iliad? How was that first shared? For hundreds of years. These people were memorizing so many stories and sharing them. They were a little bit different place to place. They could speak for hours. And what were the people doing? Listening. They were listening. So now we're just up in here saying that the world's first audiobooks in the form of Homer's Iliad or other stories just don't count. I think there is an aspect to sharing characters and narratives when voiced by real humans with emotional inflection that is really important and actually does something slightly different in our brains than just reading with our eyes. Now, of course, read with your eyes because you need to use your own imagination. That is a good thing to do. But also learn how to take stories in through different mediums. Anyways, rant over. For now. There's also some fantastic audiobooks that if you know who the narrator is, sometimes I'll pick a book solely based off of the narrator, and I think that's kind of fun. Now, when I was getting into reading, I was always watching videos about how to read faster because I'm a really slow reader, and I will zone out and reread the same page 4 times, which is obviously not efficient. A lot of times they would say 2 words into the sentence, like draw your eyes there first and end 2 words before the sentence has ended, or like the line on the page, because your brain can still see it in its periphery. But I'm like, yeah, but so then I'm still reading it. I don't know. It didn't work for me because different things about eye tracking just took me out of the book. And I was thinking more about how I was reading than what I was actually reading. So for me, to keep my mind zeroed in so that I could read faster and not be thinking about other things, have my mind wandering, and then I'm just reading the same pages over and over again, I had to buy, you're gonna laugh, like Silly Putty or little fidget toys, because now my body is moving and that is keeping my brain quiet because there's a fidget somewhere else. The fidget doesn't have to be here. Because there's a low-lying stimulus somewhere else, my brain is just clear and open to think about the reading. Try it out. It's hard being an iPad kid in this day and age. Now, if you're stuck reading one genre, reading 100 books of that genre is gonna suck, in my opinion. And listen, I love fantasy. I love romance. I love a cheeky little thriller. If you asked me to read 100 of just one of those, I would say no, respectfully. Variety is key, and if you've only ever read one genre, I would really encourage you to branch out. Look up the most popular book in a given genre, just see what the people are on about, and you might find something that you really like. Especially when I'm reading like heavy books, I need a palate cleanser. But then if you read too many palate cleansers, you're like, I need something with some substance. And that keeps me in a cycle of interest, clearing the palate, heavy topics, having fun, being intrigued by new worlds, and it just keeps going. Also reading seasonally. Read summary books in the summer. It'll help you connect. Read Dark Academia in the fall. That will make sense in your brain. Don't read a nice summer book under the Christmas tree. That doesn't make sense. We want maximum enjoyment out of our books. Lastly, I would say get excited about your books. For me, the number of books I've been convinced to read based on a fan edit or some fan art, I'm a little embarrassed to admit, it's a lot of books. Sometimes I see one quote on TikTok and I go, TBR, immediately. And when I see other people talking about the book on TikTok, on YouTube, I'm interested. I want to be part of that. And it lights this kind of fire of, let's go, I need to read this. I have FOMO. If you just pick up a book and you're like, I have no one to talk about this, no one cares, or no one's interested. Like, even if you can't talk to the person on TikTok, right? You know, you're part of the parasocial conversation. That's really fun. Like, you feel like you're part of something bigger. And isn't that why we maybe want to read 100 books, is to open our minds, expand our learning, but also be part of a community, because the bookish community is really fun and very uplifting and just a great place to discover more about yourself. So why would you not take full advantage of all of those incredible qualities and try and be a part of that community? That's where engaging with different authors, different media formats, different reviewers of things can make you feel so much more excited about reading that you will want to continue and want to keep adding on to that year-long reading goal. That's it. Those are my tips. That is how I read 100 books a year. Those are some things that just help me out, get me excited about reading. Hopefully that lights a fire under you and that you can just enjoy all of the books that your heart desires. And remember, 1 book a year is an accomplishment. 10 books a year, 200 books a year. Don't let arbitrary goals stop you from growing yourself and becoming the best you that you can be. So go, turn off YouTube, go enjoy your books, start reading, and let me know if any of these worked for you. Okay, bye!